There are 7 billion of people in the world, meaning there are 7 billion stories will be told. Despite the homogenizing ambitions attributed to the leaves of McDonald's, everywhere is not the same. Landscape vary, life chances are materially affected by the lottery of location. Location is not just something we encounter and deal with, it is part of us. Where we are is part of who we are. I was born in a remote and mountain-locked area in southwest China. It is a land of various ethnic groups, landscapes, natural scenarios, and special creatures where one could taste the most natural aspects of our planet. The closeness to nature allows me to enjoy so much fun from the wild outdoor world. We always go hiking, climbing, and camping around lakes and mountains. Continual outdoor activities always tie my families together as a big tribe. Gradually, it nurtures my love for nature and the interest to explore the world. The most exciting thing about my hometown is that, with its special and superior geologic structure and its climate condition, it's particularly suitable for nourishing mushrooms. It's the richest location on Earth for wild mushrooms. The picking season for harvesting mushrooms stretching all the way from May to September. It's always abundant, since most of them grow out again after rains. The long history of having this special attribute, people establishes a set of food cushion around them for their nutritional and medicinal benefits. Almost every town serves different mushrooms in the market, as well as with local flavor on the menu, from long shimmer hot pots, aromatic stir fries, to texturally varied salads. People from all over China come by to eat and purchase the special wild products in the season. Plenty of fun experiences along the way, such as mushroom hunting excursions with local experts, culinary journeys focused on the delicacies. As a principal producer and exporter in China, huge consumption has made every year. The harvest of wild mushrooms in general can generate abundant income. It counts for a significant attribute to rural livelihoods and local economics. Because of its prosperous economic and cultural trends, these expensive treats are often transported to convention center and international exhibition. Grand mushroom festivals have been hosted to cater the demands. Fun facts about different types of mushroom. One called pine mushroom, matsutake in Japan, that is used of being exported massively to Japan. After pests destroyed Japanese matsutake industry over the last 50 years, Yunnan quickly stepped in and now supplies Japan with more than half its yearly demand. It is said the matsutake was the only plant that survived the atomic bombing on Hiroshima in 1945, and since then, the Japanese have developed a strong belief in their health benefits. Another one called Poletas. It is said to dispel and prevent colds and strengthen the immune system. Yunnan had no SARS cases in 2003, and the locals claim this was because they eat so many mushrooms and fungus. Not mention that it is also important to learn about wild mushrooms if they shall be eaten. From June to October, also the food poisoning season in Yunnan peaks, mostly due to an incorrect way of preparing and cooking them. Some mushroom food poisoning may end in enjoyable hallucinations, sometimes even get very sick and die. The hallucinations often resemble each other. Many affected people by talking about tiny people dancing in front of them. How funny and magical it is. I still can recall how we used to run around the mountains in early morning and back to the bottom with a full bag of differently colorful mushrooms, but ended up with only a few can be edible after my grandpa's check. By watching the bag for trashing mushrooms, as a child, you just can't help stopping your curiosity about the legendary hallucination that people always laugh around. Well, I admit, I got poisoned once accidentally. I was in an exam period at that time, came home with only 10% of total marks on the paper. Of course, ended up getting nailed by my mom. Several days later, I still acted super dumpy. My mom got frightened and thought that her abusive action might make me mentally retarded. Luckily, I back to normal and healthy after several days. These cute delicacies may appear any time from summer to autumn, but their growth is triggered by weather, especially temperature and precipitation, the impact of previous harvests. While the demand market is still increasing, it could result in the extinction of some species over the long term. Otherwise, local mushroom pickers, traders, and researchers must figure out a new way by commercially farming them, which now seems like not practical since most of them are atomic cortisol fungus. These problems are concerned the most by the government because as a local, owning this special attribute, it is a mean of daily life involved with mushrooms and fungus that not only shaped our culture on various aspects, such as the construction of identity, ideology, language, media, but also took a significant role in developing the region in relation to its narrowly specialized economics. I had the privilege of living in Japan for over 2 months last year to visit my cousin, who's a Japanese teacher in a language school. During that time, I've lived with my Japanese friend and my cousin's friends who have stayed in Japan for many years. Most of them were so patient with me as they helped me to understand the culture and the language. The longer I spent in Japan, the more I realized that my these kind friends were not an exception to the rule. In fact, they were a perfect example of kindness, love, and respect that is ingrained in the Japanese culture. These social and cultural characteristics are translated from society more broadly to the day-to-day experience. Little things like bowing is an important aspect of the Japanese culture that can be seen from their personality as one of many ways they make efforts to show respect to each other. When I first arrived in Japan, it makes me feel quite annoyed of seeing people constantly bow to others throughout every conversation. Sometimes they bow even when they are talking on the phone. I don't understand why do they have to do all these extra needless little jobs. After spending more time, it becomes such a part of my nature as well. Then I realized bowing in Japan is customary, same as Indians are known to fold their hands for the mansate, while people from the West prefer a handshake. Tim Creswell has indicated this idea that the notion of in place, out of place, these values and assumptions drive ideas about which identities and behaviors we might deem to be appropriate and comfortable in place, in those spaces, and which we might see as inappropriate out of space. These cultural norms often are embedded with psychological significance. By constantly bowing to others and seeing people bow to me, I do think there is something to be said for actively showing respect to everyone you meet, whether they have earned that respect yet or not. A bow is an exception of humanity. It always indicates respect. A famous bowing picture taken in Japan after the caretaker finishes the well show. He bows to a well. In Naran, deer have become so accustomed to bows so that they will bow back. Another custom called Mantainai also makes me memorable. It is a sense of regret after having wasted something and can be translated as both such a waste and don't be wasteful. There are many examples of practice of Mantainai in Japan. Oh, kimono clothes, is recycled and reused into beautiful accessories, including chopsticks holders, glass holders, and fans. It's rude to leave food behind on your plate, whatever you're in your own house or in a restaurant. Think is built adapt to a toilet tank, so the used water from the sink is used again in the toilet bowl. Local grocery stores collect all kinds of food that is near expiration and sell it at a highly reduced price so that it gets consumed and not tossed away. My cousin told me that in Japan, when one receives a gift beautifully wrapped in paper, they usually will carefully unwrap it, making sure not to tear the paper or cut the ribbon, and then they will unfold the paper and take it home to be reused. It is said that mottainai has come to be thought of as an all-encompassing Japanese for the four R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, and respect. The limited geographic location, an island nation with a high population and slim resources throughout history, has shaped their characteristics as individuals and as members of various groups, ranging from families to societies. And in design, they also shaped the environment so that it is congruent with these characteristics and supportive of them, which is known as the idea of minimalism. Minimalism is the intentional promotion of things we most value and the removal of everything that distracts us from it. This value embeds in Japanese architecture, interior design, art, and lifestyles. Another important environmental fact that has developed this value is because Japan is regularly beset by earthquakes. Nearly half of earthquake injuries come from falling objects. It doesn't make sense to have a lot of valuable possessions lying around in your house. While the modern culture, we are automatically trying to be more, achieve more, and earn more. We are finally catching on that living simply is essential to being able to enjoy abundance, minus the stress. Minimalist Fumio Sasaki wrote in his book, Goodbye Things, The New Japanese Minimalism. Spending less time on cleaning or shopping means I have more time to spend with friends, go out, or travel on my days off. I have become more active. The goal is not just decluttering, but re-evaluating what possessions mean. For some, it is about focusing their energy on other possessions such as friends and life experiences. The more I looked into this value, the more I pushed myself to practice it in everyday's life. Whenever I'm shopping, I will ask myself several times if I do really need that item. How long can I use it for? Gradually, it makes me step off the treadmill of consumerism, in a way, and seek happiness elsewhere. I would look for more adventure activities instead of staying indoor, saving money for delicious food instead of buying a luxury handbag where I would need to buy more stuff to match with it. Having a minimalist lifestyle gives me real freedom to focus on what's more important and what I enjoy the most in life, not how have others seen me. Embrace quality, not quantity. These specific cultural values that I learned in Japan have affected on my personally held beliefs and led me to engage more in environmentally friendly behaviors. In return, I will pass this idea to people around me when they see I'm doing it. Traveling overseas presents many challenges, so it's no surprise that studying abroad has definitely not been easy along the way. I was just 16 years old when I first landed here in Canada. It's been 4 years now, and I have had some wonderful and some tough experiences that I will remember throughout my life. As I have lived in a totally different culture society, I'm often quite conscious of being a foreigner, aware of all the changing conditions that I'm exposed to. I tried to integrate into the Westerner society, although most Canadians were nice and friendly. It was difficult to develop a close friendship with them, since we hold different expectations regarding what friends should do and had little knowledge about Canadian people, culture, society, and their way of life. Therefore, I had difficulties understanding conversations when it came to topics such as sports, movies, TV dramas, pop music. The predominant social distance affected my social decision that had made a shift to look for friends who have same cultural background with me. However, even though we speak same language, a lot of them are different from friends I had back in China. There are striking differences with old Chinese immigrant generation. Today's fresh newcomers are especially those who bring with them a significant sums of cash. I was very frustrated at that time. I thought I was coming here for encountering elites and getting better education, whereas the reality is people around me are mostly celebrating vacuity. So by the time I found myself in a rather unique situation, I was experiencing culture shocks from both Canadians and people from my motherland. I struggled a lot in the first several years on how to define my identities and how I am defined by others. As time goes by, the more I'm getting to know the distinctness of these identities, the more that I can approach the balance of valuing my individualities and distinguish myself from the groups I don't belong to by working on my advantages that marks me out from the crowd and looking for the crowd that I share things with. After I overcome that big bump, I started to put my attention on elsewhere. I was fascinated by the diversity of cultural perspectives. Seeing Muslim girl wearing hijab was quite shocked to me at first. I asked them questions about their religion and how do they feel about wearing it. They told me, it's just a kind of self-expression that you choose to put a piece of clothes over your head, as simple as you have a tattoo. The more I stayed with them, the more I realized it is indeed just a personal preferences rather than anything else, which is also how it's supposed to be looked at in today's society. With the rise of Donald Trump, with the rise of radical Islam, with the rise of Islam constantly being in the media as a monster, not as a peaceful region, we should not indiscriminately demonize the whole group and read off their attitudes and characteristics only from that position. I do think to make the choice to be able to present yourself in that way is courageous. Not even when you wear the hijab, but just being different. Having something different about you, it all comes down to a strong mentality, confidence. They're very different from what we used to learn in the novels or in a history class. That saying Muslim women are pressed, meek, and they're controlled by their men. But look at them. They're wearing a hijab. They're also a Western woman, born and raised in Canada, who's very confident of their religion and culture. As the cultural historian Frank Mort once remarked, we're not in any simple sense black or gay. Rather, we carry a bewildering range of different and at times conflicting identities around with us in our heads at the same time. There is a continuous merging of personas and lifestyles, depending where we are and spaces we are moving between. Being able to get knowledge of these imaginative identities and construct them help to shape my sense, not only of the meaning of cultures, but of our most intimate sense of ourselves. Every time when I am overwhelmed in a new place by myself because of being different, I think about them. It is hard to be in a foreign place in which you have to speak a different language, eat unfamiliar foods, and encounter unexpected circumstances. Can be discollating in itself when you're an adult used to deal with all kinds of chaos situations. For student-aged me, it's even harder that I have to undergo traumas from the spontaneous pangs of homesickness to social isolation, depression, and anxiety. Step by step, my ability of problem solving has developed after overcoming these hard things. I got my confidence, and my entire perception on life has changed along the way. I went from being so afraid to so unafraid, or unafraid to tackle the things I was afraid of. I was so much more open. I let my personality come out of its shell. As Lizzie Velasquez said once, when you go to bed at night, you put your head on the pillow and you take the makeup off. You're stripped down to just you. What do you have? You have what's on your inside. You have your personalities, values, the things that mean the most to you. You have your dreams. Those things are what build your identities and make you confident. Canada is such a special place for me where I spend so much time on exploring myself as well as the world. It is a place where I got beyond my patriarchal life and while enjoying its divine. Well, I learned about areas of the world and people of which I would otherwise be largely ignorant. Studying abroad also gives me a wider and more progressively liberal perspective. Having a globally thinking allows me to compare and even more usefully connect our own lives and places to those of others. In a way, helps me to build my future plans with more thoughtfully understanding about surrounding environment. As it was wrote in the textbook, each and every person's perception is shaped by the culture they belong to. Their perspective of the world changes due to external influence on them. With the proliferation of the internet and the advancement of technology, societies and cultures are becoming increasingly interconnected and intermingled. We are increasingly exposed to different cultural identities and backgrounds. To fit into this evolving world, we effectively adopt a globalized and collective culture, a synthesis of predominant ideas from various cultures around the world.